I knew something was seriously wrong when Sarah from HR knocked on my office door and whispered, "Alex, you forgot to initial the new security clearance update." Problem was, I never forget anything. That's why Apex Systems ran like a Swiss watch instead of a complete disaster. Still, I signed the paper, handed it back, and went right back to configuring the final ITAR compliance protocols for the $750 million TechFlow Dynamics merger. The one they kept announcing at every company meeting like it was the second coming, but nobody actually understood how it worked. My name's Alexander Walsh. I'm 52, and I've been at this company for 16 years, not making noise, not playing politics. I wasn't the foosball table crowd or the craft beer Friday warriors who wrote manifestos about company culture on our internal wiki. I was the guy who made sure our defense contracts passed DFARS audits, who built the encrypted backbone between TechFlow's ancient legacy systems and our current infrastructure that had survived 5 different CTOs. You know, the boring stuff, the critical stuff, the stuff they didn't even know they needed until it broke and I had to crawl in at 2 a.m. on Christmas morning to fix it. That Tuesday morning, October 5th, started normal enough. I had 3 monitors open, 2 half-empty coffee cups going cold on my desk, and a sticky note that said, "Review NICEPOM Section 5, ITAR controls circled in red ink." Behind me, the office hummed with the usual startup energy. Project managers strutting around like they invented time management, developers arguing about whether Python was emotionally intelligent enough, and one intern playing the same 15 seconds of some rap song on repeat until I nearly threw my stapler at his desk. And there I sat, alone in my corner cubicle, reviewing the final security clearance documentation for TechFlow. My name, Alexander R. Walsh, was right there on the federal paperwork. Primary Systems Architect, Secret Level Security Liaison, CMMC Compliance Authority. I was the bridge between civilian tech and military-grade security. Nobody else in the company had that level of clearance. Nobody else even wanted it. The training alone took 8 months of red tape and a psychological evaluation that felt like getting licensed to handle state secrets. They gave me the authority, then promptly forgot I had it. I didn't mind being invisible. There's real power in it. You get to build quietly while the loud people drown each other in buzzwords and mission statements. I wasn't gunning for the executive parking spot. I just wanted my systems clean, my documentation tight, and my morning routine uninterrupted. At $95,000 a year, I wasn't getting rich, but I was comfortable. My wife Linda knew I'd rather solve problems than create them, and our daughter Katie was halfway through her junior year at Ohio State thanks to the steady paycheck. The only people who really knew what I did were the ones who understood how fragile the whole setup was. Tommy in legal, Patricia at TechFlow's compliance office, my old Army buddy Rodriguez who got me into this field before he retired to run a fishing charter in Panama City. Everyone else saw me as just Alex from infrastructure, quiet, middle-aged, overdressed for a tech company, over-caffeinated, underappreciated. I'd done my 8 years in the Army Signal Corps as a 25B information technology specialist, 2 tours in Afghanistan from 2003 to 2011. That's where I learned how real security worked, not the paper-pushing version most companies pretended was enough. When you've seen what happens when communications fail in Kandahar, you take system reliability seriously. When you've held a secret clearance that took 18 months to process and annual polygraphs to maintain, you understand why shortcuts get people killed. Then Cameron Phillips arrived in September, but let me back up. The TechFlow deal had been my project since January. 9 months of meetings, documentation, compliance reviews, security audits. I'd personally walk through every integration point, every data handoff, every encryption protocol. The merger was supposed to close Monday, October 18th. My sign-off was literally the last step. Everything was aligned. Months of work, ITR compliance protocols, DFARS audit triggers, third-party security verifications, cross-system data compliance frameworks, all of it ready to go. Cameron showed up 6 weeks before the close date, our new chief operating officer. Early 40s, all jawline and caffeine, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck payment. He had that Stanford MBA energy, the kind of guy who thinks synergy is a management philosophy and calls spreadsheets weapons of mass optimization. The mandatory all-hands meeting happened that Tuesday morning. Cameron smiled too much, talked too fast, called himself a transformation catalyst. I knew within 5 minutes we were all already broken in his eyes, just waiting to be fixed or replaced. He spoke for 38 minutes straight, dropping words like agility, digital transformation, and legacy infrastructure modernization. People around me nodded like he was Moses coming down from Mount LinkedIn. I just sipped my lukewarm coffee and quietly ran a diagnostic on a server cluster that nobody else even knew was failing. The weird thing was he kept looking at a printed list. Names, I figured. Every few minutes his eyes would scan the room, land on someone, then go back to the paper. When his gaze hit me, he paused longer than the others, made a small mark with his pen. After the meeting, I grabbed Emma Rodriguez, my go-to person in the junior analyst pool. Smart kid, 26, reminded me of Katie, but with better instincts about office politics. "What did you think of the new guy?" I asked. She glanced around, lowered her voice. "Honestly, he scares me. Did you see him during the Q&A?" When Jerry from engineering asked about the systems timeline, Cameron looked like he wanted to fire him on the spot. Had noticed. Jerry'd been here 12 years, knew where all the bodies were buried. If Cameron was already sizing up 12-year veterans, guys like me with 16 years of institutional knowledge were probably marked for extinction. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I made copies of everything. The original TechFlow protocol checklist, the DFARS compliance requirements, the ITAR export control documentation with my name stamped on every page as the certified security liaison. I took them home that night and filed them in my old Army footlocker, next to my discharge papers and the letter of recommendation from Colonel Martinez that had gotten me this job back in 2008. Linda was grading papers at the kitchen table when I walked in with the manila envelope. "Working late again?" "Just backing up some important files. Cameron's got me nervous." She looked up from her red pen. "The new operations guy? What's he doing?" "Making lists. Asking questions about who's essential versus who's just been here a long time. Honey, you built half their systems. How could you not be essential?" I sat down across from her, watched her mark up another student's essay. After 22 years of marriage, she knew when I was worried. Companies don't always see it that way. Sometimes they'd rather start fresh than deal with people who remember how things used to work. Well, if they're that stupid, maybe it's time to update your resume anyway. She was right, but I hoped it wouldn't come to that. Katie had 2 more years at Ohio State, and we'd just refinanced the house to help with tuition. At 52, starting over wasn't exactly appealing. Wednesday morning, October 6th, Cameron started making his rounds. Individual meetings with department heads, then senior staff, then what he called strategic personnel assessments. I wasn't on any of those lists. Thursday, he met with the compliance team for 3 hours. Friday, he had back-to-back sessions with legal and HR. I kept my head down, worked on the final TechFlow security protocols, and watched. Emma kept me updated on the office gossip. Cameron was asking detailed questions about personnel, specifically about who had access to what systems. He wanted org charts showing dependencies, skill overlaps, and what he called single points of failure. Single points of failure. That's what they called people like me now. "He's got spreadsheets, Alex," Emma whispered during our Friday afternoon check-in. "Color-coded. Green for keep, yellow for evaluate, red for... well, you can guess. What color am I?" She looked uncomfortable. "I didn't see your name on the lists I caught a glimpse of. That was almost worse than being red." Over the weekend, I did something I hadn't done since leaving the Army. I created a personal situation report. SITREP, we used to call it. Threat assessment, available resources, courses of action. By Sunday evening, I had a clear picture. Cameron saw me as expensive legacy, infrastructure that needed to be replaced with something cheaper and more modern. Monday morning, October 11th, the email came. Subject line, organizational efficiency review, all hands mandatory meeting, 10 a.m. sharp. Same conference room as the week before, but this time Cameron had backup. 2 people from HR I'd never seen before, plus our regular HR director, Sarah, plus some guy in an expensive suit who introduced himself as a transition consultant. I sat in the back, laptop open, running final diagnostics on the TechFlow integration while Cameron talked. The irony wasn't lost on me. While he explained how they were going to streamline operations, I was literally keeping his biggest deal from falling apart. Cameron stood at the front, that same confident smile, but now it felt predatory. As we moved toward Monday's milestone with TechFlow, he began, "It's important that we right-size our team for maximum efficiency." Right size. Corporate speak for fire people. We've identified several opportunities for streamlining, particularly in areas where we have legacy processes that can be modernized or automated. His eyes swept the room, landed on me for just a second longer than the others. Effective immediately, we're implementing a restructuring plan that will position us for sustainable growth. The transition consultant took over. Corporate restructuring, enhanced productivity models, strategic realignment. 20 minutes of buzzwords that all meant the same thing. Heads were going to roll. They handed out individual meeting schedules. Mine was Tuesday, October 12th, 2 p.m., Conference Room B. The same room where they'd interviewed me 16 years ago, back when they were desperate for someone who understood both military-grade security and civilian business processes. I went back to my desk, finished the morning's work, and did something I'd never done in all my years at Apex. I took a long lunch, drove to Murphy's Diner down the street, ordered a burger, and called Rodriguez. "Alex, buddy, what's up? You sound tense. Remember that conversation we had about corporate loyalty being a one-way street? Yeah, you finally figuring that out? Maybe. Listen, hypothetically, if someone with my level of secret clearance got terminated right before a major defense contract signature, what would happen to the contract?" Rodriguez was quiet for a minute. I could hear seagulls in the background. Lucky bastard fishing in Florida while I dealt with corporate politics in Ohio. Hypothetically, if the named security liaison got terminated without proper substitution and recertification through DoD channels, that contract would be dead in the water. NISPOM regulations are crystal clear about that. Why? Just curious about the process. Alex, you sound like a man standing on a bridge looking down at the water. Maybe I am. Well, if you decide to jump, make sure you know how to swim. Tuesday afternoon, 2 p.m., I walked into Conference Room B. Sarah was there with her clipboard, plus one of the new HR people, plus Cameron. No transition consultant this time, just the execution squad. "Alex, thanks for coming," Cameron said, like I'd had a choice. "Please, have a seat." I sat, waited. Let them do the talking. Sarah slid a manila envelope across the table. "We've made some difficult decisions about restructuring the technical team," she began. "Your position is being eliminated as part of our modernization initiative." I opened the envelope, scanned the letter. Standard corporate termination language, severance package, COBRA continuation, return of company property. Then I saw the effective date, immediately. "You want me gone today?" Cameron leaned forward, trying to look sympathetic. "Alex, you've been a valuable contributor, but frankly, your skill set is more aligned with legacy systems than our forward-looking technology stack. We need people who can adapt to modern methodologies." Legacy systems. There it was. The guy who'd kept their infrastructure running was now outdated equipment. I see. And the TechFlow merger? My secret clearance is embedded in the ITAR compliance documentation. Cameron waved a hand like he was shooing a fly. "We'll handle the transition internally. Our legal team assures us it's just a matter of updating paperwork. Just paperwork." These people thought DoD security clearances were like changing a password on Facebook. "I'll need your badge and laptop before you leave today," the new HR person said. "Security has been notified." That's when I saw it. On Sarah's desk, partially hidden under her notebook, was a printed photo of my face. Someone had written in red ink across the bottom, "Escort out, no building access, not terminated employee, not Alex Walsh, just a security risk that needed to be removed." 16 years of fixing their problems, training their people, keeping their biggest contracts alive, and I was being treated like a criminal with a cardboard box. I stood up slowly, looked Cameron in the eye. One question. "Did you actually read the NISPOM requirements for security liaison substitution, or did you just assume someone else could handle it?" His smile faltered for just a second. "Like I said, we'll manage the transition." I nodded, walked out, packed my desk into a box, and left my badge on Sarah's desk. No scene, no speech, no threats, just a quiet goodbye and the soft click of a door closing. But I didn't go straight home. First, I drove to my truck, sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, and made a decision that would cost Apex Systems $750 million. I pulled out my phone, opened the DoD Secure Access app, and navigated to my digital certificate store. Found the entry labeled TechFlow Integration Authority, A.R. Walsh, primary. This wasn't just a password or a file. This was a cryptographic key tied to my personal secret clearance, embedded in every handshake between Apex's systems and TechFlow's compliance servers. Without this certificate, the merger couldn't close. Period. I deleted it. The phone buzzed. Certificate revocation confirmed, change irreversible. Then I drove home, walked into the kitchen, and told Linda what happened. They fired you? Today? Right before the big merger? She set down her coffee mug hard enough to rattle the table. After 16 years? Apparently I'm legacy infrastructure now. Those idiots. Do they have any idea what you actually do for that company? Not a clue, and now they're about to find out. Linda knew me well enough to recognize that tone. What did you do, Alex? Nothing illegal, nothing unethical. I just removed my access to systems I'm no longer authorized to access. She studied my face. But there's more to it than that. There's always more to it. That evening, I pulled out the file copies I'd made, spread them across the dining room table like I was planning a military operation. Because in a way, I was. The original TechFlow protocol checklist was 47 pages long. My name appeared on 31 of them as the certified security liaison. Section 7, subsection C, was the kill shot. Termination of named liaison without formal substitution and recertification voids compliance status and suspends legal standing of acquisition protocol. Plain English, fire me without replacing me properly and the merger becomes worthless paper. They'd fired me on Tuesday. The merger was supposed to close Monday. That gave them 6 days to find someone else with secret clearance, get them certified through federal channels, and embed their credentials in the system architecture. Good luck with that. The clearance process alone took 8 months minimum, assuming they could find someone who qualified. Wednesday morning, October 13th, I woke up unemployed for the first time since leaving the Army. Linda had already left for her teaching job at Westerville High. The house was quiet. No emails, no meetings, no crisis calls. Just me and a pot of coffee, and the growing certainty that somewhere across town, Cameron Phillips was about to have the worst week of his corporate life. I called Daniel Martinez my attorney, old family friend, smart guy, no nonsense. Alex, what can I do for you? I need a formal letter drafted. Notification that I'm no longer employed by Apex Systems and no longer authorized to act on their behalf for any federal contracts or compliance matters. This about that termination yesterday? Among other things. Any particular rush on this? Yeah, today would be good. And Daniel, make sure it's crystal clear that all my security clearance obligations to Apex ceased the moment they terminated me. You sound like a man with a plan. I sound like a man who read his contract. By noon, Daniel had drafted a 2-page letter that was both polite and lethal. He sent copies to TechFlow's legal department, Apex's general counsel, and the DoD compliance office responsible for monitoring defense contractor mergers. The first call came at 2:17 p.m. My phone rang. Caller ID showed Apex Systems. I let it go to voicemail. Second call, 2:23 p.m. This time from a number I didn't recognize. Voicemail again. Third call, 2:31 p.m. Different number. I picked up. Alex, this is Patricia Williams at TechFlow. We need to talk. Hi, Patricia. What can I do for you? We just received a letter from your attorney stating that you're no longer authorized to complete the security certification for our merger. Is that accurate? That's correct. I was terminated yesterday. Silence. Then, Alex, your digital signature is embedded in our compliance system. Your clearance verification is hard-coded into the merger protocols. We can't just substitute someone else. I understand that might be inconvenient. Inconvenient? Alex, this is a $750 million deal. We're supposed to close Monday. Without your certification, the entire acquisition is void. Then you might want to talk to Apex about that. We tried. Their legal team says it's just a paperwork issue, that they can handle it internally. But our compliance officers are telling us that's impossible without an 8-month recertification process. Your compliance officers are correct. Another pause. Alex, can we work something out here? Maybe you could complete the certification as an independent contractor? Patricia, I appreciate the call, but I'm no longer in a position to assist with Apex-related matters. You'll need to resolve this with them directly. But you're the only person who can... I'm not employed by Apex Systems. As of yesterday, I have no authority to act on their behalf. I'm sure you understand the legal implications. She hung up, probably to call her own legal team and explain that their $750 million acquisition had just hit a brick wall named Alexander Walsh. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time it was Tommy from Apex Legal. "Alex, buddy, we need to chat." "Hi, Tommy. Congratulations on the merger closing Monday." "Yeah, about that. We've got a small hiccup with the TechFlow certification. Patricia Williams is saying there's some kind of technical issue with your digital signature." "Not technical, Tommy. Legal. I'm no longer authorized to sign anything for Apex. Come on, Alex, it's just a formality. Cameron says you could finish up the paperwork as a contractor. Quick and easy. Cameron fired me yesterday and had security escort me out like a criminal. Now he wants me to save his merger? Look, I know the termination was handled poorly, but this is bigger than office politics. If this deal falls through, it could seriously damage the company. Then maybe Cameron should have thought about that before he decided I was legacy infrastructure. Alex, be reasonable. We can make this worth your while. What would it take? I looked out the window at my neighbor working on his classic Camaro, thought about the 16 years I'd spent keeping Apex's systems running, the nights and weekends and holidays I'd sacrificed for a company that saw me as disposable. Tommy, here's what it would take. Cameron. Phillips publicly apologizes for the termination. I get reinstated with a promotion to Chief Security Officer, and my salary gets doubled to $190,000. Oh, and that security photo with my face on it? Cameron personally removes it and apologizes to every employee who saw it. Alex, you know that's not going to happen. Then I guess you're going to miss your Monday deadline. Thursday morning, October 14th, 2 days before the merger deadline. I was sitting on my back deck, drinking coffee and reading the news on my tablet when Emma called. Alex, this place is completely insane. Cameron's been in meetings since 6 a.m. Legal's running around like their hair's on fire. HR's in full panic mode. And get this, they flew in some DoD consultant from Arlington to see if there's a workaround for the certification issue. Find anything? Nothing. The consultant took one look at the NISPOM requirements and basically told them they were screwed. Said the only way to fix it was to get you back or wait 8 months for a new clearance approval. How's Cameron taking it? He looks like he hasn't slept in days. Word is he's been on the phone with TechFlow's CEO since yesterday. They are not happy. I imagine not. Alex, there's something else. They're putting together some kind of emergency offer. Big money. I heard Sarah mention numbers that made my eyes water. Emma, whatever they offer, remember this. They had 16 years to appreciate what I brought to the table. They chose to see me as a problem to be solved instead of an asset to be valued. Sometimes the only way people learn the real cost of something is when they can't have it anymore. That afternoon, around 3 p.m., a black sedan pulled into my driveway. 2 people got out, Cameron Phillips and someone I didn't recognize, a woman in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. They rang the doorbell. I let them wait while I finished my coffee, then answered the door. Alex, Cameron said, trying to smile. Thanks for seeing us. This is Jennifer Walsh, no relation, from our board of directors. Jennifer stepped forward. Mr. Walsh, we're here to discuss a resolution to the current situation. What situation is that? Cameron's smile faltered. The TechFlow certification issue. We understand there may have been some miscommunication about your termination. Miscommunication? You fired me and had security treat me like a terrorist. Jennifer opened her briefcase, pulled out a folder. We're prepared to offer you a very generous consulting contract to complete the merger certification. 6 months at $200 an hour, plus a completion bonus of $100,000. I did the math quickly. At my old salary of $95,000, I was making about $45 an hour. Their offer was more than 4 times that rate, plus a substantial bonus. It was tempting. Too bad it was about 48 hours too late. That's an interesting proposal, but I'm not sure I'm available for consulting work right now. Cameron leaned forward. Alex, be reasonable. This is a $750 million deal. If it falls through, it hurts everyone. The company, the employees, the stockholders. Cameron, let me ask you something. When you fired me Tuesday, did you consider how it might hurt everyone? Or were you just focused on your modernization plan? Look, maybe I was hasty. Maybe? You called me legacy infrastructure. You had my photo posted at security like I was a criminal. You assumed someone else could just step in and handle work that took me 16 years to master. Jennifer tried again. Mr. Walsh, what would it take to resolve this situation? I looked at Cameron, remembered the smug confidence he'd shown in that conference room, the casual way he'd dismissed years of service and expertise. Here's what it would take. Cameron publicly admits he made a mistake, apologizes to the entire company, and reinstates me as Chief Technology Officer with a $150,000 salary. Plus, Apex pays me a $200,000 consulting fee for the emergency nature of this request. Cameron's face went red. That's extortion. No, that's the market rate for fixing your mistake. You created this problem, not me. They left 20 minutes later. Cameron slammed the car door hard enough to make my neighbor look up from his Camaro. Friday passed quietly. No calls, no visits, no last-minute offers. By 5 p.m. it was over. Monday morning, October 18th, TechFlow's statement hit the financial websites. Due to unresolvable compliance gaps and personnel irregularities, TechFlow Dynamics has terminated acquisition proceedings with Apex Systems. $750 million gone, just like that. Tuesday, I registered Walsh Security Consulting LLC. Wednesday, my first client called. Within 6 months, I was making $285 an hour, exactly 6 times my old rate, and loving every minute of it. Sometimes the best revenge is just being right.